Welcome to the Paint Center. Today, I would like to give you some directions about how to set up, clean up, and use the Tempera paint bottles. The Tempera paint bottles are located on the top of the paint cart. There are two different kinds of Tempera paints. The first basket has mostly flesh tone colors, and I did laminate a card with samples of that paint so that you can see what it looks like when it dries. In the basket next door, we have the rainbow palette of colors, and they look just like they appear in the bottle. To use this center, you will need the basket of paint as well as a paint tray. It is okay to carry the basket over to your workplace at the paint center, but please be aware that you are sharing this paint with other students. You can see here that I have a level 2 paper. I can only paint on level 2 or even level 3 paper. Level 1 paper is too thin. Once it gets wet, the water will eventually tear the paper. I will need a pencil. I need a paint tray, a container of water, as well as some sponges to help tap my paintbrush dry. Over here, I've organized paintbrushes for us this year. Different paintbrushes do different things. If you are using the liquid Tempera bottles, then I recommend you use the red and green brushes. The brush themselves are actually green and red. I'm going to lay a few out just so you can get a feel for the different types of bristle heads. There are ones called a flat brush because the top is flat, kind of squarish. There are ones that are more rounded. Those are great for painting lines or outlines. These flatter brushes are good for filling in large areas, and of course the smaller brushes are best for doing detail. In addition, these other brushes that are labeled bristle brushes also work well with Tempera paint. So I begin a painting by putting my name and class code here in the corner of my paper. Then I will flip over. I don't want my name or class code accidentally painted over. The next step was to squirt out some paint. You are aiming to get paint squeezed out the size of a dime. So you'll actually see I put a dime on the paint tray, and your goal is to use no more paint than that to begin your artwork. This will give you space to create colors, stir inside those deep wells, and then you don't have the paint spilling over the edges. You can always refill color if you use it up in the course of painting, but we're trying to reduce wasted or unused paint at the end of class. The other thing I need to think about is I should not fill every single well with color. I need to select just a few colors that I plan to use in class today, leaving some empty spaces so that if I wish to mix a new color, I have a place to do that right here on my paint palette. Again, I can always go back to get more paint, so it's best to start out with too little and then add in more once you get going on your painting. So I'm going to move this dime. Just want to give you a quick demonstration about how to mix up colors. So if I want to create a lighter green, I am simply going to scoop out some of the white into a new or empty well on my tray and then scoop out a little bit of green. The reason that I'm beginning a new well is so that I have more white and more green left behind in order to adjust the color if I don't like what I first created. So at the moment, I'm making like a mint green color. Maybe I want it lighter, so I can scoop a little more white until I am happy with the results. When I start painting, I need to make sure that I'm pulling the paintbrush, never pushing it. So you can either pull the brush from one side to the other, or some students prefer to pull down towards them. What we should not see is you pushing the brush away from you. You'll start to notice there are some stray hairs that are getting bent out of shape. Later, that makes the brush have a really bad hair day, and it's difficult to paint clean edges or smooth lines. When I'm done with the color, I will come over here and gently rinse in the water bowl, checking to see visually that most of my color has come off of the paintbrush. And then I will use the sponges here to tap excess water off my brush. I'm seeing some green here, so that's telling me my brush may be a little bit dirty yet. So I might wash that a little bit longer and then come back to the sponge and tap again. So I'll repeat, I can make a new color. I'm gonna dip a little bit of whatever colors I need into a new empty well, stir them together. When I'm painting, whatever direction I paint, whether I'm pulling sideways or pulling up and down, my paint should feel smooth and spreadable. This paint can be thinned if I would like to add water. I can make it more transparent, almost like a watercolor. I just want to be mindful that my paintbrush is not too dry. When that happens, I start getting streaky, uneven, oops, sorry, it's hard to do this with one hand, streaky or uneven marks with my paintbrush. And I may not like how that looks if I'm trying to fill in an area solid. So keeping your brush wet with paint and a little dash of water will help it remain spreadable. For cleanup, we want to get cleanup done in 5 minutes or less. So you're mostly sorting materials and the teacher will wash them later. Over here is a container. It'll be labeled dirty brushes, but it can also include the paint palette. So you'll simply set that inside to soak. I will wash that in between classes for you. You need to go back to get your water. Pour that out into the sink, give it a little rinse, and then set it in the drying basket labeled water bowls. I need to take my artwork and place it on the drying rack. So across from me, it says K-K. Look for the card that has your class code on your assigned day, and all of your artwork will go on that particular drying rack. And then my final step will be to wipe the table if there's any paint on it. In order to wipe the table, I need something called a chamois cloth. It's from this bucket here. They look like these orange washcloths, and they hold a lot of water. So I'm going to get it wet and give it a squeeze. I should not have any water dripping out of this when I go to the table, because that is just creating more mess, and my goal is to be cleaned up in 5 minutes or less. I will then come to the paint table, and I should only wash where I see paint. So if it's looking pretty clean, or there's only a small space that needs to be scrubbed down, please only wash that small space. That'll save us time with waiting for the table to dry, and kids can get moving on their studio trackers a little faster. When I'm done, give it another rinse at the sink so I can get rid of any paint color before the next student uses it, and leave this in the box labeled chamois cloths. I hope you enjoy painting today. Thank you for watching.